Hello, this is the final tutorial to help you with your final summative task. Whew, you've made it through about 8 minutes of listening to me and you have about 5 more minutes to go. This is going to be the most heavy. This model that I'm going to talk about is actually found in Classroom. So your model actually has a blank outline, and I'm using this as part of one of my examples that I'm going to fill in for you. So at the essential question, the first thing you're going to do is select your 3 specs from the movie notes and decide first what types of opportunity are being impacted and is it in a positive or negative way. Once you've decided that, then you can form your thesis. You're going to notice with my thesis, I take words from the question and I turn them into a well-developed argument. First, disasters. Like the Great Depression, feel free to use that beginning. Impacted American. Now, this is the part you have to input. What kinds of opportunity are you going to talk about? My model is going to focus on political, social, economic, environmental. You list all of them. Don't name the events, just the types of opportunity. And then you'll say in negative, positive, or negative and positive ways. You can actually do both. I'm okay with that. Just make sure you're in your analysis, you explain which part it's proving when you get to write the final writing piece. Okay, so that's your thesis statement. From there, you want to go and fill in your specific example. Your specific example must have specifics. That's why we use the word. If you're talking about the banks closing, you need to give statistics of how many banks closed, how many savings were lost. So if you take a second and read over my model, in 1932, 20,000 former American World War I veterans and their families marched on Washington, D.C. to demand that President Herbert Hoover give them their war bonuses early. The bonus was not supposed to be given to the veterans until 1945, but due to the economic circumstances, the veterans needed the money earlier, so they marched on the Capitol to demand their bonuses. In response, President Hoover called out the National Guard, barricaded himself in the White House, and had the camp set on fire to disband the group. The conclusion of this protest, an infant and veteran were killed. That is simply the facts. I give you the date, the who was involved, how many, where they went, what they were trying to do, why they were there, what the president did. So you're going to notice my specific examples are not one dinky sentence. It is a meaty sentence that describes the event with no bias. I don't say it's horrible. I don't say it was terrible. I simply give you the fact. No quotation marks because it's paraphrased, but you should have an in-text citation at the end. That is the name of the video, The Century Stormy Weather. Okay, so that's the specs. So how do I connect the thesis to the specs? That's the job of A. You're going to notice that I actually allude to my thesis. During the Depression, that's the disaster, I introduce the topic of my specs, the bonus Army's March on Washington. I don't give you any facts about it. I just introduce it. So the banks failing, whatever you're talking about, Huey Kingfish Long, had unfortunate consequences for President Hoover. That's alluding to the second part of my thesis. Notice I use synonym. Unfortunate consequences are the negative ways that I mentioned. For President Hoover, that's the political opportunity that I'm going to be talking about. The president has to do with politics. So notice that I've narrowed in, I've created that funnel by introducing my disaster, my specs, and alluding to how it's going to be a negative impact on political opportunity. But I don't introduce any of it. That's what my specs and analysis will do. I just funnel down to it. Finally, I do my analysis statement. And this is the part that you're going to use your thesis to do. Always look at your thesis when you do this part. For my analysis, I introduce the disaster during the Great Depression. I remind the reader of the specs, the bonus Army's March on Washington, and then I remind them what I'm arguing had a negative impact on American political opportunity because I have yet to even start my analysis. I've simply laid the groundwork. I've reminded my reader of the thesis, the specs, and my argument. Then I explain, after this event, the citizens felt as if their president had turned his back on the people during a time of crisis. Thus, Hoover's popularity went down, and this laid the path for the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So I've alluded to the negative aspect of political opportunity in 2 ways. One, the American people felt betrayed by their president during a time of crisis, so disasters impact people's psyche. And 2, I allude to the fact that Hoover is going to lose the election, so therefore his political opportunity is impacted in a negative way as well. All right, so that's the model for how to set up your outline. If you have any questions, this was quick, please reach out to me and we can touch base. Once again, this is a model and should not be used for your prompt. Good luck.